Welcome back, along with Dominic and Andrew. Our guest this evening, Wendy Long, Republican nominee for U.S. Senate from the state of New York, looking to unseat the incumbent Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, the former litigator who served as Supreme Court clerk for Clarence Thomas, she faces a challenge like all Republicans do, facing statewide office in New York. Latest polls show Long trailing Gillibrand at 27% to 64. Two big challenges for Wendy, both name recognition and fundraising. 74% in this poll said they didn't know enough about her to form an opinion, and in terms of fundraising, Gillibrand has raised approximately $13.8 million compared to Long's latest numbers that we saw posted, at least, of $337,000. So, natural question is, how do you win when you've got both a name recognition disadvantage and a financial one?
Well, I actually like that number that says 74% don't know enough yet. Those are my people, because they're the ones I need to speak to about Kirsten Gillibrand's record. The big issue here is people don't know enough about her. They don't know what she did. They think of her, those who know anything about her record, think of her as this moderate blue dog Democrat who was an upstate congresswoman who was for fiscal responsibility and a balanced budget amendment, and said that she kept her guns under her bed and so forth. And then, you know, she was sort of the accidental senator appointed by the accidental governor, David Patterson, and suddenly, overnight, she became a far left liberal. She became, in fact, she's ranked now by National Journal as the #1 liberal in the U.S. Senate, as a result of the policies she's pursued largely, which are more taxing, more spending, more regulation. You know, she's voted for the stimulus. She votes even for things like federal funding of ACORN, one of only a handful of senators to do
Wendy,
that.
You're going to make the compelling argument to the public, she's too lefty for New York. Still costs money. You got 62 counties in New York, a lot of media markets out there. We gave the numbers about what you got in the bank, and also, you know, how much of a cash disadvantage you're at and how many people you got to reach out to. How do you close that gap with less than 50 days and without a lot of money to do it?
Well, we keep talking about the issues. We rely on wonderful, fair media outlets like this one, who will invite us on to make our case, give us a chance. That's very, very important.
All right, you can come back.
Thank you, Andrew. No, it's very, very important, because a lot of times we do have the mainstream media in the tank for the Democrats. And so I think it's very good when media outlets are fair and give us a chance.
Well, let me give you an opportunity to talk about a couple issues that are on the radar of New Yorkers this week. We saw on the recent primary here 4 New York State Senate Republicans who voted for same-sex marriage. Now, 1 is not seeking re-election, but the other 3 were primaried, and 2 right now are facing recounts or actual retallies here. But it looks like when they're all recounted that at the end of the day they may be on the short end of the stick. If you were in their districts, would you have voted for them for, many argue, political courage, or would you have voted for their primary opponents because you don't agree with the positions they took that 2 men or 2 women can get married in the state of New York?
Well, like Barack Obama until just a few months ago, I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. So I have a very mainstream view on that was shared by the president until just a few months ago. So that's how I would vote as an individual voter. I do think it's very important that we have sensitive issues like this decided at the ballot box by representatives instead of being decided by courts. I think that's important. That's a step in the right direction. I think a lot of what you're seeing too is people are just unhappy about sort of the shenanigans that went on in the legislature in terms of, you know, people saying they were going to vote one way and arm twisting and all that sort of thing. I think you're seeing some reaction to that. So I think it's, you know, the democratic process at work.
Do you think, if you lived, I'll take the Poughkeepsie district for example, Steve Salan, who's been an institution, he had a safe seat, but yet he took this vote here, and he very well may be out of a job he's held for a long time here because of it. Are there points for principle that even if you disagree with, the body of work outweighs the particular issue? Or I'm putting you in Poughkeepsie for election night and primary. Would you have voted for him or his opponent?
I'm not going to vote in districts I'm not a member of, Rich. I'm just not going to do it. But I will tell you, voters sometimes vote when people stand on principle. They think that's important, even if they disagree with them.
Okay.
I hope that's going to be the case to some extent with me. I'm a person who's always stood on principle. I don't flip-flop. I don't tell one story in one place and one story in another place, unlike my opponent, Kirsten Gillibrand, who does that all the time. So I do believe it's important to stand on principle. I think that's an admirable quality in any legislator.
Another principled issue that you've taken, I've gone to your site, is that you say you were 100% pro-life. There are a lot of questions came up in Tampa where Andrew was at over the platform of the GOP. No exceptions, not even in cases of rape, incest, or health of the mother. Do you make exceptions when you say 100%? Is that across the board, even victims of rape or incest, no abortions allowed?
I'm 100% pro-life, of course not for the life of the mother. If the mother's life is truly in danger. I've answered this question a lot of times, including here, and so that's my position. It's really an issue that I think is properly left to the states. So if I were running for the New York Assembly or the New York State Senate, that would be an important issue because that's where these issues are supposed to be decided. I'm running for federal office,
well,
and that's not...
If you became senator and there were a vacancy in the Supreme Court, one of the litmus tests has always been, as you know, as you clerked for Clarence Thomas, everybody wants to know positions or anything that there's been any voting records or anything that they've done behind the bench for how they've done on any issues related to Roe v. Wade. And people want to know where you stand.
Well, and what you've done on Roe v. Wade isn't necessarily what your personal position is on abortion. They're two completely different things, and this is actually something I really object to in our judicial selection and nomination and confirmation process in the Senate. As a United States Senator, I don't care at all what a judge's position is on abortion. It is completely irrelevant, and I say that for both sides. I didn't want to know John Roberts' position on abortion. I didn't care. Sam Alito. I, in fact, know and have been very close to some federal judges who are very pro-choice, but they would still uphold the Constitution. They think Roe v. Wade is a flawed decision, and I think that the people in every state should be allowed to make the decisions on what kind of abortion law they want for themselves.
There have been federal personhood amendments that have been offered in the House, haven't made it to the Senate yet, but that would define life as beginning at conception. Would you support such a measure if it came to you in the Senate?
Well, it's pretty irrelevant. There's no way that it's ever going to pass. So I don't think that it's pertinent. It's not going to happen. And I think that the place to be deciding these policies is at the state level.
Ronald Reagan is referenced with great affection on your site here as one of your heroes. And Jeb Bush recently said that, and I'll read this directly here, Ronald Reagan would have, based on his record of finding accommodation, finding some degree of common ground, as would my dad, obviously Bush Sr., they would have a hard time if you define the Republican Party, and I don't, as having an orthodoxy that doesn't allow for disagreement, doesn't allow for finding some common ground. And he went on to say they've got a lot of stuff done with bipartisan support. Bipartisan has become, and compromise has become, a dirty word. The recent examples that we can find on day one of Obama coming in, you had the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell say our primary job isn't getting the economy back on track, it's to get Barack Obama out of office. Should people know that a vote for you is a vote for bipartisanship? Or is it principled orthodoxy that they either come to our side of the aisle or I'm not meeting them halfway?
I believe in the Ronald Reagan school of compromise and getting things done, absolutely. I think we should begin compromising on ways to cut federal spending and bring the debt down. I believe we should start compromising on reforming the tax code and getting it to be a more simple, pro-growth tax code that isn't confusing everyone who's trying to file and do their income taxes, that isn't saddling small businesses with incredible tax burdens. So I think that we should compromise on things to move this country forward, and I think that's what we should do. I think, frankly, that the Democrat Senate has been part of the obstruction lately. You know, they haven't even passed a budget. My opponent and her colleagues have not even passed a federal budget in 3 years. It's kind of hard to compromise with people who won't even step up to the plate and do the most basic job they were elected to do.
Real quickly, guys, got one more thing. Is there anything you'd like to ask, Wendy?
Yeah, there is a question that I have. You referred to Senator Gillibrand several times, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're calling her a political opportunist, that she felt one way in her district upstate, but went the total opposite now that she represents the entire state. Is that what you're calling her?
Well, it is, yes, and I think, you know, Richard's point about being a person of principle who stands on principle, whether you agree or disagree, we may agree and disagree on certain issues, but I think when a person in public office flips overnight and takes a completely different position just to advance their own political fortunes, I think that's unfortunate. I think we need people in public life who are willing to stand up for what they believe in.
But maybe our views changed.
Well, they changed 100% overnight on a number of issues. And even now, for example, on issues like fracking for natural gas. You know, she comes here to the southern tier where there's a very depressed economy, high unemployment. They're sitting right under their feet on this great natural resource that could provide jobs and could provide energy security for America. And she goes there and she acts like, well, you know, it's going to happen. And then when she talks to some of her far-left environmentalist allies who are filling her campaign coffers, as you showed, she says, kind of winks at them and says, oh, no, don't worry, it's not going to happen.
You realize, Wendy, you're describing Mitt Romney.
No, I'm describing Kirsten
The Mitt
Gillibrand.
Romney before and the Mitt Romney now on everything from abortion. We can go down the line from health care reform, etc. There was the Mitt Romney of Massachusetts and the Mitt Romney of today. If Gillibrand's guilty of the same thing, aren't they both condemnable for switching positions?
There has never been a greater etch-a-sketch flip-flopper than Kirsten Gillibrand. You pick the issue.
All right, fair enough. When we come back, we are going to move away from maybe some hot-button politics and get some real issues that are on New Yorkers' mind, and we're all going to weigh in on them, from controversial subway ads here to much more, including making attorneys, prospective attorneys, work for free for 50 hours before they get to practice law in New York. We'll get into all of that after this. Stay with us.